Hello and welcome to tonight's Women in Ministry TV. I'm Dr. Lena Clark, and the topic tonight is mindfulness and compassion. My cover is also dealing with the mindset. Your mind matters. And it's been in my heart to share about being compassionate and being mindful of others. We know we're during the holiday season is around us right now. Family members, you have company in town, or those may have company in town coming and shopping. If you haven't done your shopping, a lot of times we can get overwhelmed. But we also want to be mindful of others because the holiday season is about giving. Even though giving should be every day, it should not be focused on just one day of the year or a couple of days of the year. So, whatever holiday you represent, again, be mindful of the other person because mindfulness and compassion is really missing in this time because of the COVID. A lot of people are missing the camaraderie of being able to be affectionate with one another and to do the normal things because, again, of the COVID. And so many people are operating out of the spirit of fear at this time. But as we know, again, when we come together and we show more affection, then the person feels a little bit more at ease. And so I want to share with you some things about how we can build more compassionate ways towards one another and how we sometimes, again, overlook them. We need to show more love in the world today because, again, a lot of selfishness is going on. Compassion is good for the brain. It helps the brain and it also helps your body. And our brains are organized to be nurturing, to be loving, to be caring. But again, most people are operating out of selfishness. It's a fear mode, and then you have the fear of flight mode. I'm sure many of you have heard of that. But we need to be generous. Again, this is the time of season that we need to show more generosity towards one another. We need to take the eye off of ourselves and put the eyes on someone else and show them more attention. You may have certain things planned for the holidays. You may think it's a very happy season and time for you, joyful time for you. But be mindful of the other people who don't have loved ones, that they can share the same holiday that you're sharing with your loved ones. There are people who have no one that they can talk to, no one that has invited them to dinner. There are people who don't even have food that they can prepare for the holiday season. So let's be mindful of those who are lacking and those who don't have what some of us do have. Those that are less fortunate, those that, again, are trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do today? So let's reach out. Let's show more compassion. Let's zoom our eyes on other people who are in need today. You may see people that look like they have it okay or going on, but you really don't know what they're going through. If your spirit as believers, we should be in tune and discerning what others are experiencing by their actions, by their attitude. And we sometimes withdraw because we see someone showing a very dissatisfied attitude. But that's when we should embrace that person because we don't know why they're operating that way. We are to help the weaker ones as the stronger vessel. And so what we need to do as believers is to reach out, ask questions. How are you today? It doesn't cost anything to ask someone, how are you today? A lot of times people don't want to ask that question because they feel like, oh, they're just going to overload and they're going to tell me everything that's going on in their mind. Well, maybe God has sent you the one as the person to be that ear that they need, someone just to listen. This is a time of season of giving, not necessarily monetarily wise. It doesn't always have to be gifts. It doesn't always have to be materialistic things. It doesn't always have to be what we think it is. Sometimes people just want your time. Sometimes someone just wants someone to pick up the phone and say, "Hi, how are you? How can I help you? How are you feeling today?" So, again, we need to be mindful of others. Let's remove that selfishness that is going on and running rampant. Just because you have COVID that's going on, of course, there are people that are lacking affection. There's called a lack of affection syndrome as well, when people don't get around each other. There are people that haven't received a hug in over a year, almost 2 years, that have never touched anyone because of the COVID, that are afraid to touch someone. And so, again, that causes depression, that causes stress, it causes anger. And so we're trying to figure out what's wrong with that person. But again, sometimes we need to step aside and figure out what it is and what they need if they don't want to verbalize it. And so when we respond to ourselves and others with awareness, with courage, with kindness, also with love and acceptance, we have to be flexible, and we have to learn to navigate life's challenges and be more effective with each other. It's so important that we again reach out. We have to enhance the emotional well-being and increase the positive emotions. When you see someone operating in a negative way, turn those negative ways into a positive way. Increase psychological, flexibility. We have to make ourselves flexible. A lot of times you're blessed. You may be going through something yourself, but when you reach out to help someone else, you turn around and you realize, well, wow, how did that happen? I was just going through something, but I feel so much better. Or favor comes simply because you didn't focus on your issues and you turned them and you started blessing someone else. Learn to activate more positive brain activity within yourself so that you can help others be more resilient and empathetic. It's all about compassion. We know that God is love as believers. So we don't operate out of love. And we know sometimes it's hard. How do we expect others to operate that way? Because we are to set examples. We are to walk the walk and show others how it is supposed to be as believers. Simply because you might be a member of something as well. This is separate from family and the holidays, but you might be a member of a club. You might be a member of an organization where there's several of you all, and that you're doing the same thing, but it might be done at different times, different dates. But are you really supporting each other? Are you reaching out when that person is active at what they're doing? Are you encouraging the other representatives, the other supportive members within your organization or within your group? Or are you just showing up just to make sure that the light is on you? Sometimes we have to make sure that the spotlight is on someone else. In order for things to turn around, we have to sometimes take the spotlight off of ourselves. So there are many ways that we can learn to build a more compassionate mind. And I'm going to share some with you tonight, and hoping that you will take this in, activate some of it, and share some of the information with your loved ones. Explore your inner blocks to compassion and take a self-assessment. Sit back and ask yourself questions with the fears of the compassion scale. Set a scale of 1 to 10 of how do you think you're compassionate towards others? Or are you more selfish? Is it always about you? Are you the one that's always wanting to gain from it? Sometimes we have to do things again without always putting a price tag on it. Blessing others, and the blessing will come back to you. Use a soothing rhythm of breathing. Practice to calm your nervous system. Learn to relax. not to allow anxiety, not to allow what you're going through to overwhelm. Because again, your attitude is going to show because you don't see it, because you're operating out of the norm, because that's how you normally respond. But if you want a positive response, then you have to act in a positive manner. Also, try loving, be kind, meditate to build compassion for yourself and others. Many times people don't know how to be compassionate and mindful of others because they don't know how to be compassionate with themselves. There are many people who don't even love themselves, but they expect others to fill the gap. But you have to love yourself first. I've heard many times people say, well, I want to get married because that person's going to make me complete. Well, no. You have to be complete with yourself first, because no one is going to complete you but you. No one is going to fill that void but yourself and your spiritual relationship with God. Use a visualization practice. Visualize how to grow more compassionate about yourself and others. Again, doing a self-assessment. Why is it that you can't show compassion? Is it something about you, the inner self that's within you, that you're struggling with? So assess yourself and ask. And then start working on those things. Write them down. And ask yourself, okay, what is it about myself that I'm struggling with? What is it about me that I may not even like? Don't expect someone else to like you if you don't like yourself. Okay, try journaling exercises as well. Writing things down, as I just stated. It is so important that you write so that you can understand who you are, where you want to go, and how you want to be as a person overall. Before you can help someone else, you have to be whole. And so many people aren't whole, and that's why they're operating out of with the attitude that they're serving, that not compassion. They don't have a loving spirit, but again, you're operating in the opposite manner, because God is love. And if we're representing God, then that's what we should be displaying. We should be displaying a positive attitude, listening to the inner voice within ourselves. Imagine yourself going back to your childhood. Sometimes you may have experienced some trauma that may have been some of the things that have caused you not to be compassionate, to be angry, because you can't be compassionate if you're full of anger. If you're still holding on to the past, the intergenerational trauma that went on in your family that no one exposed and no one talked about, but they continue to sweep it on the rug, and you continue to deal with it, but you continue to walk with a mask on. We're not talking about a physical mask. We're talking about a spiritual mask. And in so many families, it's time to remove the hurting trauma, to remove the mask, and stop pretending like everything is okay when you know it's not okay. Okay. So moving on, if you could give a child self-compassion because it's a child, think of the adult as well as a child, because they're still operating in that childhood way. Words of wisdom. It's so important that we also display sometimes words of wisdom, because many people are struggling internally, and people internalize what they're going through and they lash out. They're full of anger. So much is going on. Look around you. You hear the news. If you watch TV or social media, everyone is trying to compete with each other. But they're feeling as if there's a void and they have to live a certain standard in order to be accepted. But you first have to accept yourself. So again, it's important to write these things down. Something that you may be struggling with today, journal it. Reach out and talk to someone who you feel that you can trust, someone that you feel that understands you. Take some of the words that you may have remembered as a child, some of the things that may have hurt you. so that you can learn to move on. Get rid of the pain so you can start helping others that are going through what you have gone through or what you may be going through. So again, learn to operate out of compassion, be mindful, be attentive, show attention, show affection. It's okay to hug. Many people have taken the vaccine and they feel, well, I don't know if that person has taken it, but if you have, according to the science, then you should be okay. So if you're operating out of faith, you should double be okay instead of operating out of fear, because God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind. So again, we want to make sure that as believers, that we are not operating in fear, that we've got to learn to show the love, display the positive things that God has given us. What we are operating in right now also is lack of affection, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. We're facing a crisis of what we call in this field of skin hunger. And these are real consequences that people are dealing with right now. Feeling deprived of someone touching them, of someone hugging them, of someone loving them. The meaningful of the actual human contact. Because we were created to love each other. We were not created to be here alone. We were created to help one another. But if we're standing 6 feet apart and we're told that you cannot do certain things, then again, that fear factor sets in. And so the lack of that physical contact is there. People feel like, okay, I just know what to do. When someone reaches out, they just want one person to open the door, and then they will start walking through. The remedy of skin hunger begins with putting down what you're overwhelmed with, putting down your electronic devices within your home, putting down your smartphone, turning off the TV, spending time with your loved ones. Stop isolating yourself simply because you don't want to be bothered. But again, it's not about you. We're showing mindfulness. It's about being compassionate. Hug someone. You don't know, again, when the last time that person has been hugged. Americans are suffering today. And some of them are right in your face. They're suffering from what we call skin hunger. In the psychology world, we call it the removal of the touching of the skin, and which is connected to the brain. There's some people, I don't know if you've ever been around people that say, can you give me a hug, that are always wanting that affection. So can you only imagine how they feel now, because they're afraid to ask for that hug because of what's going on right now, because fear has set in. So what people do is they go into a depressed state of mind, and some people start acting as if they don't even want to be around anymore. They have the suicidal tendencies that start to happen. Yes, simply because they feel like things have changed and they've given up because they've been deprived of love, compassion, and affection. Loneliness in America is on the rise. People are feeling lonely. They're feeling hopeless. They feel as if no one cares. The crime rate is overwhelming. Again, turn on the news. Pay attention to social media. It has increased over 16%, the stats. It has increased, and it's going to increase if we do not pay attention. And as believers, we have the power to step up to the plate and not be afraid and to do something. We are the ones that should be stepping up as bold Christians and bold believers and saying, okay, the buck stops here. Instead of coming together under one building, because there are many people who can't even come to the building. There are many people who can't even get out of their bed mentally or physically because they're so depressed. There are many people who've given up because they don't see the example. They don't see the models. Are we setting the standards? So how can we as believers expect them to do what's right if we're not doing it? Because we are to set examples and we are representing as leaders. So therefore, we cannot misrepresent. We have to be mindful. We have to realize, we have to believe, we have to understand that your mind matters. Everyone's mind matters. Please understand that the nature of the skin hunger is real. Let's acknowledge it. Let's try to understand it. If you don't understand it, ask questions. But it's so important that we come together as believers and let's try to get a handle on this thing. Come up with solutions. What can we do? People want answers. We talk about it, but what is the plan of action? What are we going to do? What are we able to share with others so they can come out of the darkness? We want to be able to set the captives free, set the mindset of these people free within their mind. Give them some hope. We've taken on a responsibility again as believers, whatever your position is, whether it's a pastor, whether it's an evangelist, whether it's a reverend, whether it's an elder, it doesn't matter. It's just a title. But what's behind that title? That's what they're looking at. What's behind that title? And it's more than the individual that has it written behind in front of their name. Are you operating out of that title? Or is it just there for you to look good? The study of the lack of affection, the stats, people are operating with lack of food. We know the tornadoes that just hit in several cities. Lack of water. Lack of having a roof over their head. In the areas that destroyed these cities, if they don't get their things together within the next couple of days, then it's going to be destroyed because there's more weather coming in. There's rain coming in. There's more cold weather coming in. So we have to keep these things in mind, being mindful. Examine what's going on around us because the results are astronomical. We also need to specifically compare the people. Think about the people that are suffering from the lack of affection, the lack of attention, the lack of caring, as I mentioned, the lack of hunger. People need to feel more affection because it makes them feel more happy. They're deprived. It gives them a sense of worth. It gives them a sense of wanting to go on. It gives them a sense of wanting to smile. It gives them a sense of being joyful. They have less social support. They have no support system. And so they're looking for certain support to come from certain areas, such as believers. And they're asking, well, where are they? This is where we're supposed to go. But they're not seeing that. Now, I'm not negating and saying that it's happening all the time. Of course not. But we need to make sure that we up our game when it comes to representing, when it comes to being mindful of one another. Secondary, the immune system. When we lack self-affection, affection towards others, it affects the immune system because it's all connected. God gave this and put it in position for us to be able to love one another. So your affection that you no longer receive anymore starts to affect your mind. Then it starts to affect your body, certain organs in your body. It breaks down your immune system. And so that's why a lot of people give up. You've heard of some people that have been in the hospital. They've been on the operating table, but they say, well, you need to fight. You got this. You can do this. You're going to come out. But many people didn't come out because they gave up spiritually. They didn't have hope anymore. So guess what? They didn't survive. simply because they gave up mentally and spiritually. But if they had that encouragement or the mindset to go on, they probably would have survived. And next, we often find ourselves preoccupied of fearful avoidance, attachment. Many of us are guilty of that. And so, because of that, the people are less likely to form secure attachments with others in their lives. There's a trust factor there. They can't become attached to others because they lack trust. Many have been hurt. Many things have been taken from them. Many have gone through, and we all have gone through. But we have to learn to trust again. We have to build that trust factor up. We have to educate one another, support one another, be mindful of what each individual has gone through or is going through right now. It's important to establish the lack of the skin hunger, which is lack of affection. The negative conditions that we're going through right now, and it's only, again, going to get worse. So we need to feel more highly effective so that we can bridge the gap of the deprivation that people are experiencing at this time. Affection, contact is so necessary for a healthy life that we suffer. And when we don't get enough of that, we do suffer from that. Fortunately, skin hunger doesn't have to be a permanent condition. It could be temporary, of course, but it does not need to be removed completely from your life because no man is an island. Each of us has the capacity to show affection in our lives. In the meantime, let's put down what's taking our attention. Let's not be selfish. Let's put down what we think is important to us and pick up what's important to someone else. Because what you give to others is going to come back to you. For those who suffer from the human contact, lack of skin hunger, as technology has said, we need to meditate. We need to pray about it. There are scriptures, such as what we talked about before. God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind. God does not want us to operate in fear at all. He wants us to know that we have the power. And that's why the scripture says we have power. But it's up to us to utilize that. He wants us to have a sound mind. He doesn't want us to have a weak mind. He doesn't want us to be weary. Of course, we feel that way sometimes because of what's going on, and it's not easy. But we have to learn to put what's going on, put our pride aside, put our ego aside, and reach out and know that it's okay to ask for help. If you yourself are lacking the skin hunger, if you're lacking affection even within your home, the attention, but you're taking it out on others. There are many parents that are going through right now within their homes, within their marriage, but they're taking it out on their children. But we have to realize that it's not the child's fault. The child is lacking, they're deprived of the attention and of the love. And so that's why we have to learn to put ourselves aside. Reach out because our children are hurting. And talking to our younger generation, the millennials and the Gen Z, many parents have put their kids off on others. They're put their kids off on social media and expecting them to raise them. No mall or no location should have to put a curfew into place for your children. That is your job to do. That is your job to make sure that your child is set at home in a certain location, especially if they're a minor. Otherwise, we know that the system is going to get them. But it's your responsibility It's your responsibility to show affection to your children, spouses. Show attention to each other. Yes, we're going through. These are trying times. But again, we've got to learn to take the attention off of ourselves. Thank you, Beverly. Amen. Thank you for chiming in. I am so adamant about this. I see kids that are hurting. I see kids out there on the news, girls fighting, backbiting each other. But we as women need to realize that we have more power when we come together. But they're fighting because they're hurting. They're fighting because they're angry. They're fighting because they're probably seeing that at home. That's why it's so important that you model positive things in front of your children. Women, take your daughters back. Take your daughters back. They need a role model. They don't need you competing with them. They don't need you dressing just like they are. And then people trying to figure out, oh, well, who's the daughter here? Who's the mother? They want you to represent as the mother. We need our fathers also to represent. Fathers, take your sons back. I see some men that are fathers, but you're wearing your pants below your waist just like your son. But how are you representing? Now, I don't know why the shift is going on here with this, but it needs to be said. We are to represent as believers, as Christians. Where are you? We don't give the enemy play. We don't say, oh, well, the devil, no, the devil has no power. When you accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and personal Savior, that's it. But we also need to be mindful to know that the adversary does exist. But if we don't stand up and be the bold Christians, then this is what's going to happen. You protect your home from someone coming in and destroying or breaking into your home or taking what's yours. You're going to fight and make sure that person does not harm you or come in to destroy whatever they're coming to destroy. So we have to do the same as believers. We have to stand up as Christian warriors, because this is a new day. God is raising up a new army. And he's asking, where are his soldiers? Where is the family? Where are the believers? And it doesn't have to be in a building. Why are so many believers afraid to take the ministry to the street? Excuse me. Why are so many believers afraid to stand up? Excuse me. It's time. Excuse me. Okay. My apologies, but I had to take a break, a water break for a moment. So, as I was sharing with you all, that it's so important that we are very mindful, that we remove the selfish thinking, the selfish acting, the selfish behavior, along with the foolishness, is what I often see. Because if we don't speak the truth, who's going to speak it? If we don't stand up for what's right, we'll stand for anything. And we're living in those times where we need to start standing up for what's right and not standing up for what everyone else is standing up for, but start standing up for the truth. Many people are speaking, and I've heard even believers say, well, they've reached out behind the scene and they don't agree with certain things that are being said or things that are being done. Well, if you feel that way, then you need to voice your opinion, because it's in your heart for a reason. So how are they going to know? Yes, be prayerful about it, but we also need to voice our opinions about the truth. Because how are we going to come together as believers, as a whole, to fix this situation that we're dealing with right now? The lack of self-touch. And this is a spiritual situation. Yes, I'm sharing the mind, because the mind matters and how the mind works. But we have to keep in mind that the mind controls everything. The mind is the engine to who you are. And if your mind is not functioning right, then that throws everything off. You have to understand how you think as an individual. I encourage each one to do your research. Again, do your self-assessment. Assess yourself first. Ask questions within your family. And don't be afraid to ask questions. If you want to encourage, if you want to show compassion, you first have to inner heal within yourself. You first have to have the compassion towards who you are as an individual. Because otherwise, the person that you're going to show compassion and love to, they're going to discern that. And they may already know. So let's start working on self first. Write these things down. Journal them. What is it that I'm lacking? Are you lacking compassion? Are you lacking being mindful? Is it always about you? Are you selfish? And many times people do have that. Now, I'm not negating that it's wrong with that, because a lot of times having your own is okay. But we need to show compassion. We need to be balanced. We cannot misrepresent. And we can't always have, again, the spotlight on us. It needs to be balanced. It's called sacrifice. As believers, we have to sacrifice. Many people don't want to sacrifice because, again, they don't know how. Many have been deprived most of their lives, and they feel like, well, I deserve this. I deserve to have this. This is my time. And that may be true. But in order for you to continue to be blessed, you also have to keep in mind that you also have to be the one to reach out at the same time. Because you give so that you can receive in return. And again, it doesn't have to be monetarily. It could be of your time. It could be of your caring, of your love for someone, just picking up the phone. Many of us sit back and we wait for someone to pick up the phone and call us. Well, I haven't heard from them. They called me. I called them last, so they need to call me. Does it really matter? Because you don't know what that other person might be going through. There may be a mental blockage with that person. And we can no longer continue to damage each other by saying things to hurt each other. And sometimes things are said intentional, and sometimes things are said unintentional. That's why we need to do a self-assessment. Oftentimes, it's not what we say, but it's how we say it, even within our own families, within our own homes. These are intergenerational chains that need to be broken. These are things that we need, again, to self assess. So, if we're going to represent during this time of year, which is the time of giving, the time of loving, don't just wait until December to do this. This should be 12 months. This should be every day. So, start today and learn to be mindful of who you are so that you can be mindful of others. Start operating out of love. Start showing more compassion. Learn to love on yourself and ask him about it. Well, how do I do that? Because no one has loved me. So how do I show love? Because I've never had anyone to love me. Because I've always been beat down most of my life. I've always been told that I'm not going to do this, or I'm not worthy of this or worthy of that. And this is when I talk about the intergenerational trauma that has existed with so many families. And that's where we're lacking the mindfulness and the compassion. Because as we know, and as many have heard, hurt people hurt people. But it's time that we stop hurting one another because we're simply hurt. It's time to start healing. It's time to start looking at yourself. Do that assessment and ask yourself, how can I heal? How can I help others? But I know I need healing first. And know that it's always okay to reach out. Know that it's okay to ask questions. Many of us, especially in certain cultures, don't want to do that. They feel as if I'm good. I don't need to ask for help. Well, none of us are good, to be honest with you. We all need someone. We all need that support. We all need someone to guide us. Because again, no one is an island. So I'm going to leave with you all tonight before closing to reach out to someone. Challenge yourself. Reach out to someone, or maybe more than one person that you haven't heard from in a while. Pray about it. If your heart guides you and leads you to reach out to that person, do so, because they might be hurting. And all they want is to hear your voice. All they want is to know that someone cares. Show more love in your home. Number 2. Put down whatever you're doing. So many are so embedded and bogged down with working, classes. Again, it's a sacrifice. Put it down for a minute. You can always go back to it, but show your love. Just check in with them. Oh, I'm just checking in. I'm just making sure you're okay. It doesn't take but a minute. It doesn't cost anything to do that. And number 3, love on yourself. Don't wait for someone to wrap their arms around you. Embrace yourself. Wrap your arms around yourself and say, I love me. Look in the mirror and say, I love me. So again, it starts with you. And then it starts with you reaching out and showing compassion and being mindful. So again, I want to thank everyone for chiming in for tonight's broadcast of Your Mind Matters on the Women in Ministry TV. And I want to thank all of the ladies and Minister Jackie Jacqueline for this awesome opportunity and platform to be able to share such encouraging words. Because I want all of us to win. It's not about oneself. There's enough for everyone. But we have to want to change our mindset. And remember, it starts with you. So with that being said, everyone have a wonderful rest of the evening. And happy holidays to everyone, and good night.